Welcome to the Skull King Football Podcast, presented by Fox DFS Firelines. Now, here are your hosts, Justin and Ryan Skullrood.
Hello and welcome to the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Skullrood. I'm your host tonight. Usually my brother's going along with this thing with me. He's out sick tonight, so it's just me doing a solo show. Wanted to welcome you guys all. I hope you all had a fun time trick-or-treating with your kids, or maybe trick-or-treating yourself. Or if you're like me, taking your kids trick-or-treating to figure out all the candy that you're going to take out of their baskets while they're sleeping. I've already had my share tonight. So I may be on a little bit of a sugar high, talking a little bit quick, but I'll try to slow it down for you guys tonight. What a wild week in fantasy football. I mean, you talk about injuries, absolute injuries and just crappy play absolutely killed me this week. I think I finished 1-4, and that one still my team came nowhere near projection. So why don't we go ahead and get into some news and notes, and then after that we're going to get into some of the stars from this last week and a bunch of the flops from this last week, most of which I own. So that's really encouraging. So I know that a lot of you guys are going to be feeling my pain when it comes to how a lot of these guys ended up playing. So let's start with the news and notes. In Philadelphia, Coach Doug Peterson said he will evaluate in these next couple of days, quote unquote, whether to replace Ryan Matthews with Darren Sproles as the number one running back. Now, that's great news for all those Ryan Matthews owners and believers. I was not a huge believer in Ryan Matthews, not necessarily because I didn't think he was talented. My issue was more I didn't think he'd be able to stay healthy, but now it's just he's not able to get the job done. And so it looks like Darren Sproles is probably going to be the number one. I don't know how that's going to – I mean, Darren Sproles had an okay game that in Sunday night against Dallas. I was kind of hoping that Wendell Smallwood would start getting the carries, but I don't think they have quite enough confidence in the rookie yet. So as of right now, this is I'm moving on from Ryan Matthews. Maybe bench him for just maybe a week until we get some final confirmation on how that's all going to play out. Number 2, next on the list, Coach Dan Quinn of the Atlanta Falcons has confirmed that rookie tight end Austin Hooper will start against the Bucs in Week 9. This is after Jacob Tammy's injury. I believe it was a separated shoulder. Yeah, it's a shoulder injury. So Hooper played 73% of the snaps after Tammy went down. Ended up finishing the game, 5 catches on 5 targets for 41 yards. He has Tampa Bay in this next game, which isn't a great it's not a great matchup. I believe Tampa Bay only gives up, I think it's given up the 9th fewest points to tight ends, but they're vulnerable just about everywhere else on their defense. So that could be a spot where maybe a streaming option in Austin Hooper. Also, Julio Jones has had his knee examined earlier today, but as of right now, Dan Quinn said he should be good to go for the Thursday night game against Tampa Bay. Let's be honest, this is no different than most years for Julio Jones, where he ends up on the injury report in some fashion, whether it's his knee or his foot or his ankles, pretty much every week. But he still goes out there and plays and balls out. So for right now, I wouldn't have too much of a worry about Julio. He should be good to go in this next week. Buffalo Bills coach Rex Ryan said Monday that he is hopeful LeSean McCoy will be able to practice on Thursday. Now, it is helpful that McCoy has one extra day getting ready for the Monday Night Football game against Seattle in Seattle. That's not necessarily a great matchup for LeSean McCoy. the Seattle defense will have one extra day to get ready for that one after being on the field so much these last couple games. I hate to say it, but if McCoy is fully healthy, he could be an okay start against the he's one of the top running backs in fantasy right now and in the league. So, if you've got him, you're going to start him anyway. There would be, I'm just saying that with how the Seattle defense has been getting worn out because their offense is not getting the job done, he's a no-brainer play coming up this next week if he's healthy. If he's not, if it's Mike Gillislee, well, then Gillislee may be a sneaky start. So, next, the Nile Davis project is over in Green Bay. They have officially Packers have released Nile Davis. It looks like they are getting enough from Devontae Parker, who played this last game with Ty Montgomery, sitting due to his sickle cell trait issues, which, let's be honest, how much did that hurt everyone? Everyone thinking that this illness was just going to pass over because they hadn't disclosed what the illness was with Ty Montgomery. I know that the Vox team was absolutely scrambling when the official word came out that Ty Montgomery was not playing, refilling some spots in their lineups and rearranging things to figure out who they were going to play. But yeah, so Ty Montgomery, I'm guessing, is going to be all right for the next game. So they should. I'm guessing that's probably why they've released Nile Davis. They're just going to go that way, and I believe James Starks comes back in a couple weeks. So, Broncos head coach Gary Kubiak alluded to some frustration with Trevor Siemian at his Monday press conference. I don't think they're quite ready to go on to Paxton Lynch. And let's be honest, Trevor Siemian has not exactly had the best season. He's kind of been up and down. He had the one, was it? Did he miss just 1 week? I think he only missed the 1 week. Here we go. Let me pull him up here. Siemian's basically, he missed the one game against Atlanta in week 5. And, his totals are not anything to really be that interested in. Here on Yahoo, Siemian is purely a game manager on Denver's offense and a run game oriented team. So the Broncos can't afford for him to commit turnovers, which, let's see, he only threw the 1 pick, but he's thrown 4 already, just that he's not really throwing touchdowns. So 8-4 so far, 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Fumbled the ball twice, losing 1. Paxton Lynch didn't show enough in his week 5 spot start to be taken seriously. But, again, if Trevor Siemian's not getting the job done, luckily the Broncos defense is just absolutely balling out. So they should still be okay in terms of how the team's doing. Trevor Siemian's not playing all that well, which means that Demaryius Thomas, and who's already having his own issues not being able to catch the ball, and Emmanuel Sanders haven't been doing all that great either. So it'll be interesting to see if they do move to Paxton Lynch, how that's going to affect the other two. I believe it puts more of a stress on the run game, which we're going to get to. So let's go ahead and continue with the Broncos news. Devontae Booker is undergoing more tests, but expects to be cleared for Week 9. He came out of the game, I want to say, I can't remember if it was Kapari Bibbs who they had come in, but Booker came back in, finished the game, 19 carries, 54 yards, and a touchdown. Kind of somewhat salvaged the day that everyone thought it was going to be a huge game for him. Right now he is right now he's still the only guy that they've got. Again, Kapari Bibbs is the backup. We'll kind of find out more Wednesday when they update the injury report on how Devontae Booker is doing. If you've got the space, I would pick up Kapari Bibbs just in case. Again, if you've got the space, if you don't, maybe look a different direction. So going on to the Chargers, wide receiver Travis Benjamin has been battling a PCL sprain for a couple weeks. He's getting a second opinion. He has had continued discomfort in that knee. As you can see, he obviously hasn't been playing all that well either. Had the one big week, and that was it. So that could, if he's out, that could lead to maybe Dontrell Inman getting a little more playing time. But that's for Phillip Rivers to have to deal with so many of his wide receivers going down. It's ridiculous. Let's go on to the Arizona Cardinals. Coach Bruce Arians confirmed Monday that J.J. Nelson is now a starting wide receiver. I'm guessing that he is probably taking Michael Floyd's position, since Floyd can't seem to hold on to the ball at all. Looking here, Brown and Fitzgerald is still above him, but it looks like he's sliding into Floyd's spot. I know that so many people pick Michael Floyd. I mean, you talk about a guy who's absolutely having a bust of a contract here. I mean, he's been absolutely terrible. Dropping wide open passes right into his hands. So J.J. Nelson looks like he's going to be good to go to take that third spot, and he, like you said, performed really, really well in this last week. 8 catches, 79 yards, and 2 TDs. So it looks like he's someone that Palmer seems to have some trust in. So moving on, Larry Fitzgerald is dealing with a low ankle sprain. He's expected to be ready for Week 10 after the Cardinals bye here in Week 9. Ty Montgomery, going back to Ty Montgomery, his illness is related to his sickle cell trait. So hopefully that they'll be able to kind of figure some things out with that to get him ready for their next game. One more on the Cardinals. Coach Bruce Arians says that after test, cornerback Tyrann Mathieu has to rehab his shoulder. He will be out 3 to 6 weeks after basically separating his shoulder in the game against Carolina. So that is not good news for their defense. They've been playing really well, but we'll kind of have to see what kind of effect that's going to have, especially in the slot for slot receivers for the opposite teams, because that was the main spot that he was covering, kind of going back and forth between safety and slot corner. So going on, Jacquizz Rodgers was spotted with his left foot in a walking boot on Monday. So those of you who had Charles Sims and thought, hey, once Doug Martin's out, I've got the guy, and then he went out, and then it was Jacquizz Rodgers. So you went and got Jacquizz Rodgers, like, okay, Jacquizz Rodgers playing great. I've got the guy. Well, it looks like it now may end up being, Mike James, or who's the other one? Was it Parker? Barber. So we'll kind of see. He has a sprained foot. We'll see how he comes back. I don't think he'll be ready for Thursday. Dirk Cutter didn't seem to be too optimistic about how Jacquizz Rodgers' foot was doing. So moving on, let's go to Corey Coleman has been cleared to practice in full. So he'll be back, looks like, in Week 9 playing against the Dallas Cowboys. And so I think that'll give a bit of a boost to the offense. In the last game that he was in, he had 4 or 5 catches for 100 yards and 2 TDs. So, and with Josh McCown back and seemingly healthy, obviously Terrell Pryor is the number 1 wide receiver. He has proven that is his role. I think that could really help maybe pull a little bit of coverage off of Pryor. If Coleman can get back and be a solid contributor there. Let's go back. Trying to cycle through all these. Where'd it go? That's no good. Here's something of note. We'll see how this goes. Cowboys running back Ezekiel Elliott could face a lengthy suspension as a result of an NFL investigation into allegations of domestic violence. Twitter and Facebook and everything absolutely blew up with this, and I almost forgot to put it in the notes. as of right now, I don't think there will be any serious effect. I did have one or two leagues where I went ahead and picked up Alfred Morris just in case, because I don't have Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, the with everything that's gone down with Ray Rice and Josh Brown, the NFL is trying to, I guess you could say, get control of its players when it comes to domestic violence. And so even though what's somewhat confusing on this one is that even though the police decided not to press charges against Ezekiel Elliott, saying that there were too many conflicting reports, that does not mean that the NFL can't do something if they feel that there is enough evidence in their book to go ahead and suspend if necessary. So see if I can find I didn't find it. So okay, we may skip that. It looks like Big Ben will most likely be healthy and ready to go for week 9, which will be extremely helpful to Antonio Brown owners, as well as if you've got Sammy Coates, that'll really help him out as well. And Blake Bortles is bringing in a quarterback coach to help him with his mechanics. I mean, you go back to our bust episode, I want to say it was like episode 3. I had Blake Bortles picked as my quarterback bust. And he's proved in the first, 3 3/4 of the game in this last week on why he's horrible. And he is the king of garbage time. And everyone will look at, well, hey, he had a great fantasy game. Yes, he did, but I'm sorry, I cannot count on a guy who's only getting all of his stats in garbage time. I'm not going to take that risk. I mean, I tend to be risking a lot of my plays. That is not a way I'm willing to go. So I avoid Blake Bortles in all possibilities, whether it be even as a bye week pickup or as a starter on in a DFS lineup. I'm not going to use him. I avoid him at all costs. And the one last big piece of news, the future, I figured future Hall of Famer Andre Johnson has decided to retire. He wasn't really being utilized at all in Tennessee. They're a run-first offense. Honestly, you talk about a man who is an absolute beast of a wide receiver. I think the one mark that he never hit that I think that it may haunt him, it may not, but the fact that he never got 10 touchdowns in a season. The multiple years he got 9, but never got 10 in a season. I think it just astounds me. I remember for so many years it was between him and Megatron on who was the best wide receiver that season. And many of those years it was Megatron. There were a couple of years that Andre Johnson's just his totals rivaled Megatron, and the two of them, just seeing the two of them at the same time in the league was really just a joy. And we just want to wish Andre Johnson all the best as he moves on with his life outside of the playing arena. So, all right. So let's go ahead and get into our kind of some of our star plays this last week. Derek Carr is, he's shown to be an absolute beast, one of the very good young quarterbacks. 513 passing yards and 4 TDs, no interceptions. I mean, that's high quality right there. We'll kind of see how he can do once he goes up against Denver's defense, because that was against Tampa Bay. It'll be interesting to see how he can match up against Denver with how well that Denver defense is playing, especially against the pass. Amari Cooper, 12 catches, 173 yards, and a TD. Now, here's something interesting that I saw about Cooper that it astounds me that they're not throwing his direction more. Anytime that Amari Cooper has had less than 10 targets, he has had no more than 71 yards, no more than 5 catches. So in the 4 games that he has had less than 10 targets, he's got 5 for 71, 4 for 62, 5 for 48, 4 for 29. So when he is not emphasized, he definitely struggles. However, when he gets more than 10 targets, I'm not saying catches, more than 10 targets, 11 targets, 6 receptions, 137 yards. 12 targets, 6 receptions, 138 yards, and a TD. Plus, in 2 of those games, he had 2-point conversions. 13 targets, 10 catches, 129 yards. 15 targets, 12 catches, 173 yards, and a TD. I mean, this kid's a man-child. If Oakland would just keep throwing his direction, the guy is going to put up massive numbers. I think he gets better the more targets he gets. And so it kind of astonishes me that Oakland doesn't throw his way more. Now I understand they do have Michael Crabtree, who is also having a very, very good season. Come on. I mean, he's put up, he said what, 3 games under 80 yards so far. And when he gets 10 targets, he's 10, 8 for 96, 16, 8 for 108, 12 targets, 7 for 88, 11 targets, 8 for 102. So I mean, I think that for the most part, Michael Crabtree is not. I don't think he's the talent that Amari Cooper is. He's close. But I think that Crabtree, having some of the injury issues that he had early in his career, I think he's going to wear down a little bit sooner. And so Amari Cooper is more the guy that I favor. But I mean, both of them are having good years. I think if they throw Cooper's way, I think they'll have a little more success. So we already talked about J.J. Nelson and the great game that he had and how he's now moving into a starting role. Tyler Eifert, back from injury, 9 for 102 and a TD. Did not see that coming. The people that actually held on to him all this time, it's finally paid off. And so, I don't see that being a continual thing, but I could see, 5-6 catches, 60 yards in a TD, which is more of what he did last year. I want to say he led the league in TDs for tight ends. But he, in terms of his yards, he was number 4 or 5 overall, but his yards, he was one of the only guys that only had like 700 yards. So, Jordan Matthews, the ultimate PPR game, 11 catches for only 65 yards, but he had a TD in there. So, and then Jamison Crowder, 9 for 107 and 1. He's a guy that really, I think, is extremely underutilized in fantasy. He is a guy that should be owned much more than he is. Especially, I want to say that he's also either the punt or kick returner. So if you have return yards, scoring, Jamison Crowder should be owned. And I don't talk about Rodgers or Brady. Both of them had great games, but honestly, you expect it from them. Rodgers was not going to be held down, with the subpar numbers that he had all year. That wasn't going to happen. And now that they have no running backs, he's got to throw the ball around. He's got to throw the ball over the yard. He's going to get his numbers. So, all right, moving on for the flops. I mean, you talk about I've been on a couple of discussion boards on Facebook that I got to be honest. Sometimes I just want to leave them because they're no longer discussion boards. They're childish fights, on whether or not DeAndre Hopkins is better than Odell Beckham Jr. That was actually a major Twitter argument that when I said that I would prefer to have Odell, I don't necessarily, before the season, I didn't necessarily want to draft either one. I thought there were some other options I would rather have. And people going off, well, their numbers are basically the same over their first couple of years of their career. And Hopkins is only going to get better. Well, Hopkins hasn't done anything thanks to the quarterback. 4 for 44 yards. Now, I don't have Hopkins on any of my teams, but these next guys, this pretty much runs amok at the rest of my teams. So Spencer Ware getting knocked out, 7 carries for 19 yards, 2 catches for 28 yards, then injured. Then Charcandrick had to come in and finish up the job, did pretty well. Ware may not even be ready for this next week. So Charcandrick maybe you got to look at for picking up. God, this is the one that killed me the most. I mean, yes, I'm a Seahawks fan, and that was a rough game to watch, especially towards the end. But in fantasy, when you have a guy like Mark Ingram, you expect him to get something. You don't expect him to get only 5 yards, lose a fumble. And in one of my leagues where it's not only if you fumble, it's -1 point. And then in this league, it's minus another 2 points if the team loses the fumble. So 5 yards for a fumble that he also lost for minus 2.5 yards or minus 2.5 points and gets benched. Oh, God, that just absolutely killed me. And it looks like they may be going to a timeshare. So if you have a chance to get Tim Hightower, get Tim Hightower. Jack Doyle, 2 for 36. He looked like he was going to have a juicy matchup. That didn't work out so well. Marvin Jones is becoming pretty much invisible, 3 for 33. Julio Jones, I think part of the problems with Julio Jones this last week was the fact that he got injured, kind of had to go to the locker room to check his knee and ankles. So, but like we said, Julio Jones is going to get his. The last time I remember seeing him last year in a primetime game going up against Tampa Bay, I want to say he put up like almost right around 200 receiving yards and had 2 touchdowns. So I think that he'll be pretty good for this next game. He'll be healthy, so should be good to go. Let's go quickly through our pickups of the week. We don't want to have this episode go too long. Pickups of the week. In terms of waiver wire pickups, there's not a whole lot that I really like this week. We've got, I want to say, another 6 teams on bye this week, which it's going to be brutal. Next week there's another 3 or 4. So for those of you going through bye week hell, let's look at Sam Bradford is only owned in 16% of leagues, and he's got a game against Detroit. I believe it's at home against Detroit. So he should be set up for a pretty good game there. Detroit's defense is terrible and giving up yards to everyone. And so look for that connection between Sam Bradford and Kyle Rudolph. Since Detroit gives up the most fantasy points to tight ends, that connection should be really good for this next week. So especially in your DFS lineups, that would be something to look at. Dak Prescott is still only owned in 62% of Yahoo leagues, and he has an absolutely amazing matchup against a terrible Cleveland defense. So if you can utilize that, if he's available in your league, you need a bye week guy. Dak Prescott, I think, is going to be a great guy to pick up. So moving on to wide receivers, with Big Ben coming back, I think that Sammy Coates would be a good pickup. 42% owned, has a game against Baltimore, at Baltimore. I want to say they're like the 7th worst in terms of giving up points to wide receivers. So he's had the extra week to let his hand heal up, so that should be beneficial. So Sammy Coates would be a guy to look at. Corey Coleman, now that he's healthy, 42% owned, going up against Dallas. Since Josh McCown's back, it's not Cody Kessler. They actually have a guy that can throw the ball, can get the ball to both him and Pryor. So that would be one way to go in terms of your wide receivers. For running backs, I've got a few here. I mean, this one I guess you could call somewhat controversial. Thomas Rawls, he's owned in 43% of leagues, and everyone says that if he comes back, it's going to be a timeshare between him and Christine Michael. However, I'm not sold on Christine Michael. There were so many plays where it looked like so many running plays where it looked like he was falling over when he should have been breaking through and taking off for another 15, 20 yards. I'm not sold. And it, according to some of the reports I've read, it doesn't sound like Pete Carroll is completely sold that Christine Michael is the guy to go with. So if they want to make sure that Rawls comes back completely healthy, he could be back in time, especially for fantasy playoffs. If he can be completely healthy and they can bring him in there, that's really going to help out the offense. I think that Thomas Rawls can break tackles and push through. So he's 43% owned in Yahoo League, so he would be more of a stash player. So if you've got the room, now I understand it's going to be a little hard this week, maybe even next week with all the teams on buys. If you've got the room, go ahead and stash him. Let's move on. Kenneth Dixon. Baltimore's just coming off a bye week. He's only 12% owned. I think he would be a good guy to go with as a hope and pray play that he manages to take over the spot from Terrence West, or at least gets utilized as the passing down back in Baltimore. And then finally, Charkandrick West, only 9% owned. He has a game against Jacksonville. Again, like we stated earlier with Spencer Ware and his injury, if he's not available to go, Charkandrick West will be the guy to go, will be the starter. I still think Jamal Charles is, in my opinion, I think he may be done for the season. If he's going to Dr. Andrews to check out both of his knees. West will have a game against Jacksonville, whose defense is, again, a bunch of, just a giant sieve to let everything through. Charkandrick West would be a decent pickup. And then finally, tight ends. I believe this will be either the third or the fourth week in a row. I understand that this week he's on a bye, but pick up CJ Fiedorowicz, for crying out loud, people. He's only 15. How is he only 15% owned in Yahoo Leagues? He has now moved up in the last 4 weeks. He has moved up to, was it number 14 in one of my PPR leagues. Let me see. Oh, crud. I hate it when my computer does this. There we go. Fiedorowicz. In the last few weeks, he has had, just take the last 5 weeks. 5 targets for 4 catches, 48 yards and a TD. 8 targets, 4 for 61. 7 targets, 6 for 85 and a TD. 7 targets, 5 for 35. 7 targets for 5 for 43 and a TD. The guy is getting, in a standard league, he's getting you your 5 to 7 points that you expect from a tight end, which really, unless you have one of the big time players, that's all you're going to get. That's all you're going to get out of your tight end. You figure 5 to 7 points in standard leagues, but in PPR, he is getting the targets, guys. Let's see, 29. In the last 5 weeks, he's gotten 34 targets. He's averaging 7 targets a game. And I know he's got Brock Osweiler thrown to him, who has not been, but Osweiler can only throw it so far. And CJ Fiedorowicz, it's not like he's running these long routes. He's only getting 7 yards a catch, 8 yards a catch, 12 yards a catch. So he's being utilized in the red zone. Pick this guy up. Use him in your DFS leagues, in your DFS lineups. CJ Fiedorowicz. And let's look at the rest of the season. Week 10 at Jacksonville. Week 11 against Oakland. Week 12 against San Diego. Week 13, Green Bay. And a good team, but they can't stop anyone on defense. Week 14, Indianapolis. Week 15, again, Jacksonville. Week 16, Cincinnati. You just saw what they gave up to Jordan Reed. And yes, Jordan Reed's, a big time, one of the big time tight ends. But Cincinnati's had trouble against the tight ends all season. So, CJ Fiedorowicz. I'm going to say it again. He is this year's Gary Barnidge. Pick him up while you still can. Okay. Sorry to go on that little rant. Okay. And finally, the last guy I have to pick up that in terms of tight ends would be Dennis Pitta. He's 44% owned, going up against Pittsburgh this week. Yeah, he has a great connection with Joe Flacco. So I mean, he's definitely a guy. He'll be used in the red zone. So Dennis Pitta, he's a good PPR guy. So yeah, those are my tight end guys. So all right, it looks like we're running out of time. So I want to just give one last shout out to all of our listeners. We could not do this without you. We appreciate all the downloads and views that we've been seeing on YouTube and iTunes and Stitcher. Thank you again for listening to the show. Be sure to tune in for our next show where we go over our DFS plays and kind of our start and sit advice for the next week. So again, thank you for listening. My name is Ryan Scoldred, and we'll talk to you later.